Hello, people. You're welcome to ProUp Masterclass. My name is Tola T.A. Alabi. And into this class, I want to share an experience I had um, earlier today with you. Some days back, I put up a post on X, and I had quite a number of people ask me to explain what I was saying in that post because it wasn't very clear to them. So they asked me to kind of expound on it or give some context to it. And to be honest with you, when I wrote that post myself, I didn't feel very confident in the clarity of what I had written. But then I felt very inspired to write it that way. Very inspired. A lot of things I write on X and I put out as a post um, are divinely inspired. There are things that come to my mind, so the wording in itself is divinely inspired. And I put this post out there, and I could see that some people were confused as to where I was coming from or where I was going, and I felt a need to record a podcast to clarify my thoughts and to explain the post. And so I went about recording a podcast, and so I got my mic, I got my phone, and I set out to record the podcast. And I started talking about what I was trying to convey in the post, and I found myself talking for about 19 minutes, and it really wasn't making it. I really wasn't going anywhere. It felt like I was rambling. I felt like I was rambling, and I started again, and I redid the podcast again, and this time I went for like 14 minutes, and it still seemed to me like I didn't I didn't understand what I was saying, and like I didn't know where I was. I wasn't giving any context, any better context to what I had written. And so it seemed like I was forcing the podcast. And I got so frustrated. I was like, why aren't you speaking? Why aren't you able to put your words together? And it just seemed like there was a barrier. It seemed like it was the first ever podcast I'd ever done. I was lost for words. I had no direction, and it seemed very stiff. And I was so frustrated and so upset that um I couldn't meet the demands of these people that asked me to give context to this post I put out there. And I felt very sad because I felt like the post didn't hit home, and nobody connected with it. And here I was trying to create a podcast um, to try to get people to understand the post, and I couldn't even create a podcast to that effect. And I felt so bad. I felt so angry. And a few minutes after I had, wrapped up everything, and I just cancelled, deleted all the recordings, I got a message from someone on Instagram that said he had seen that post that very morning, and it had been all the confirmation he needed to do something that he felt very strongly about to do. It was all the confirmation he needed to follow a spiritual leading. Now, this really humbled me because I was thinking, nobody connected to that post, and I wasn't clear enough, or the words weren't good enough. But here was this young man reaching out to me, telling me it was all he needed, and how thankful he was that I put that post out there. And at that point, it became clear to me that the reason I couldn't record a podcast further clarifying that post was simply because it didn't need a podcast. It was exactly how God wanted it to be. And at that very point in time, I knew in my spirit that I was doing the podcast like it was mine. I was operating ProUp Masterclass like it was my own project. And I was operating it like a request show. So if you have a request, send it out to me and I will play this song for you. And at that point, I heard in my spirit that this thing is not yours. This podcast is not yours. And you can't just choose topics out of a hat and say, I feel like talking about this topic, or someone has told me to talk about this. You cannot treat it like a request show. Because if you do, you will struggle to do something that you do easily, which is talk and make content. And that really humbled me, because I realized that my making the podcast was all God's grace. And every single content I had made up until now has been by His enablement. It hasn't been me. Because today, when I tried doing it in my own strength, I couldn't. It felt like I had no ability to speak or to share my thoughts anymore. And that made me realize that a lot of times we try to help God. We get in this mind frame that we need to help convey what God wants us to do in a better way. So a lot of times when I write, as I said, a lot of things I write and I write as posts are spiritual leadings. And sometimes I just feel the words are not enough. Oh, they are not clear enough. Or maybe I should explain further. Sometimes I don't put it out because I feel this doesn't make any sense. This thing I'm just about to put on social media doesn't make any sense. Why should I put this out? And I feel insecure about it. So I have so many things that I feel led by the Spirit to do, but I don't do because it doesn't make sense to me logically. Sometimes I'm like, I cannot defend this thing. If someone comes to me and says, defend this thought that you put out there, I really cannot defend it. And I hold back. I hold back from putting it out there. And today, I came to the point where I realized that I am only a servant. I am not the master of the work. I am a steward of the work. I must always do what my master requires of me, whether it makes sense to me or not. And I don't know if there's anyone listening out there today, you're doing a particular thing and, or you felt a leading to do a particular thing, and deep in your heart, you feel, doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't look good enough. It doesn't look finished enough. It doesn't look presentable enough. I think I should wait till it makes sense. Or you are doing something and people are questioning you about what you're doing, and you're spending so much of your time trying to articulate it. You're spending so much of your time trying to explain so that they can get context. I really believe that those people that are truly your audience don't need context. So when that guy reached out to me today, it really made me realize that for those whom the message is sent out to, they need no further clarification. And so don't try to pander to everybody to make sure that they get the message. And I want to say that to someone out there today. You've been holding back on something you are meant to do. Been holding back on doing it because for you, it just doesn't seem good enough. It seems too ridiculous. It seems somewhat embarrassing. It's going to evoke too many questions. In fact, it's had evoked too many questions and you've reeled it back. I want to encourage you today to follow your internal leading. Very important that you follow your internal spiritual leading and do it just the way the master wants, not the way that makes sense to you, not the way that gets applause from the people around you, but the way the master directs, the way he has directed you to go about doing what you ought to do. And that's what I've learned. You know, I learned that today that um, sometimes I look at the podcast and I'm like, um, I have so many things I want to say, but I'm like, are they brand aligned? Can I talk about this subject matter? Am I qualified to talk about this subject matter? Am I educated enough to talk about this subject matter? Have I done enough research on this subject matter? And I find myself trying to help God refine the message that He has put on my inside. I feel insecure because of my lack of expertise, because of my this the inadequacy of my portfolio in this area that I'm talking about. So I'm like, how can you talk about this? Are you a child psychologist? How can you talk about this? Are you an expert in marriage? How can you talk about this? Do you have a degree in business? How can you talk about this? How much do you know about relationships? How much do you know about the world? You see, I know there's someone out there. This mentality is what's keeping you from doing what the master has called you to do. You look at how inadequate you are as a person. You think about how inadequate you are as a person and think, no, I'm not ready yet. I'm going to sign up for this course. When I get that degree, then I'll be ready. But I'm here to tell you that you do not need to help the master. You did not need to make up for God. You do not need to add to the master's ingredients that he has given for you to prepare what he wants. You just need to be obedient. And that one person or that two people that would connect with it and say, this was just exactly what I needed, would be fully satisfied with what you offer. They will need no more added to it. They will need no explanation. It's going to be clear to them. It's going to be meaningful to them. It's going to be helpful for them. I really feel a need to put this out there today. For someone, I know there's someone who is holding back. Who is holding back because it just doesn't look right. It just doesn't look researched enough. You don't seem educated enough. Your expertise is not there yet. So you're holding back on the launch day. You're holding back on launch day. And I want to tell you, stop holding back. Because the more you prepare and try to help the master, the more you remove the grace of the master. And then you start doing it in your own strength. And then it gets frustrating. Just like the podcast was frustrating to me today. It was highly frustrating. I just couldn't do it because I was doing it in my strength. I want to encourage someone out there today. If you're listening to this, don't try to help God. Don't try to help God. When He tells you to do something, when you feel a leading in you to do something, and He tells you to go out and do it just the way you are, forget about what you've seen or how you've seen other people do it. Forget about the questions and the doubts of other people saying you are not ready. Forget about how many people tell you it doesn't make sense to them. They are not your audience. When you meet your audience, they will totally accept that which God has sent you to give to them. So I hope that helps someone out there today. I really hope someone out there who is trying to prepare themselves in their own strength and not leaning on God's way of doing it, and not leaning on God's strength and God's direction and God's word. I want to tell you to let go of your way. Let go of your experience. Let go of your expertise. Let go of your lack of education. Let go and lean on God. Lean on God and watch Him. Watch Him shine through your imperfection. Watch Him shine through your unpreparedness. Watch Him shine through your lack of expertise. Watch Him shine through the questions and the doubts that people have in you. Watch Him be the master